Hi, friends. In our time together today, I want to dive into at least partially answering a question one of the friends in our community has asked. And I'm really interested in you all adding input as well in the comments to this video because you all have great experience. Many of you have more than I. And the question revolves around how do I avoid tripping, my fingers getting all tripped up on note transitions, and how do I develop good tone quality, particularly in those lower notes? This applies to any whistle, but I'm going to use a couple of low Ds for the examples here to talk about. Now you might think this is a question and problem that impacts someone who's a newer player. I find I have this experience with most whistles I obtain. How do I get good tone quality out of this brand new whistle? Those holes are maybe separated a little differently than they are on my other whistles. How do I get my fingers comfortable there? And I've got some things I want to chat about that I'm fairly certain will help. But again, please, if you want to underline something I've said, you want to correct something I've said, you want to add to what I've said, please chime in on the notes to this video because that's so important. That's one of the reasons we have community is for us to do this together. The first one is it impacts tone quality and it impacts note transitions and whether we get all stumbly. And that's hole coverage. You all know that I've settled on a modified Piper's grip on the top of my low whistle. I've got my Howard here, and I use a fuller Piper's grip for a couple of reasons. The tips of my fingers, or if I'm not that comfortable doing the modified Piper's grip on my lower hand because I love using my pinky and to stabilize the whistle, and I like it there all the time. That's me, and so I do that on the lower hand. And hole coverage is really important for tone and also for note transitions. But if I miss that hole, like even that bottom hole by just a teeny bit, the note just shatters and falls apart. So hole coverage is really important. And I often say, and we're going to come back to that, but I want to add a little aside that I often say that you've got to pay attention to newer whistles. One of the things I like about my Howard, I can feel the holes with my fingers. Now, if I pick up the Caravev Nightingale, the holes are a little different. The hole pattern's a little longer than it is on my Howard. And I have trouble feeling that bottom hole. And so whenever I pick up the Caravev, I'm like, oh, there it is. And so invariably, when I pick up the Caravev, you may have noticed I missed that bottom hole because my third finger on my bottom hand was going for the spot where the hole is on my Howard. And I'm going to miss it. So if I'm playing the Nightingale in a video, I'll practice it a bit ahead of time because that messes with my head. So back to not tripping. We're going to get into hole coverage with tone quality in a minute, but with not tripping, developing the ability to and that wasn't ideal, but it was good enough. Developing the ability to play without tripping all over the notes is something that begins with knowing where your fingers are. It is a muscle memory, finger memory, familiarity over time. That is just going to take some time of playing. And this is why scale exercises are so helpful, because you're playing and because you want to work the fumble out. And you work the fumble out by exercising those fingers. And you exercise the fingers by running some things like just try octave jumps and things like that. Do things that are going to enable you to work on that hole, making sure you know where the holes are. It takes time. Give yourself time to learn where the holes are. If you need to start very slowly, start slowly. And this is one of the reasons I say play as you can, not as you can't. When you're playing like a fast tune, and you know how your fingers just start tripping and falling all over each other, dial it back. Slow down. Find the pace where your fingers are going to be comfortable. And then teach your fingers to become familiar with the hole placement and moving from one note to another, because we've got octave jumps, that we have to become familiar with. You've got runs. You've got all kinds of things to do. Pull out of a tune some of that stuff and just work on it. A lot of it. So I think growing in avoiding tripping between notes is a matter of familiarity with hole coverage over time. Work tunes, do scale exercises, just get your hands comfortable over time. Just keep working at it and be patient with yourself. Anyway, that's the first thing I want to throw out there. Now, secondly, our friend was talking about tone quality, particularly with regard to low notes. And that's a matter for me of hole coverage, because like I said earlier, if I'm not covering the hole correctly, you can't get a note out at all. As a matter of fact, a lot of people say if you're getting started, and I agree, walk down rather than walking up. Don't start with a low D, start with it like the B. And when you do that, you're going to figure out which finger's giving you grief. Like if you're trying to play the low D, and you get that, it might not be that bottom hole. It might be another one. For example, I was messing around there and I had incorrectly covered the second hole. So, and just feel where your fingers are. And that will help. Now, tone quality is also a factor, not just of hole coverage. Tone quality is a factor of consistent airflow. You know, one of the things about a whistle, and this is different from my saxophone playing where I could blow in spurts at times, is just consistent airflow. Blow out just consistent airflow. And when you start running out of air, find a place to get a breath. Well, find a place to get a breath before you run out of air, and keep going. So it's a consistent airflow, and that's why ornamentation is so important. And it's also why tonguing, which often disrupts the airflow, is not seen as acceptable by some. Though I love tonguing a note, but you're going to have to focus on your breath pressure. So, your constant breath. So constant breath. And it's not a because then you're not getting, when you enter a note, there's a different tone entering a note, and you stabilize, and there's a different tone leaving a note. And so it's more important to just have constant air flowing and let your fingers do the note change rather than and that's very, very important there, just that constant breath. And then we've talked about another factor, breath pressure, and we've talked about this, and you need to learn it with each whistle. And I want to talk about accepting the tone of your whistle as well to close out. But as I think about breath pressure, every whistle I own is a little different, and you need to so your hands need to become familiar with where the holes are. That takes time. Be patient and attentive exercise on that. And attentive exercise means find ways to play and work on those things that are difficult at a pace at which you could play it. Let yourself play with a constant stream of air as much as possible, but don't run out of air. Breathe when you can. And then breath pressure is really important. When I got the Howard, I've said this before, I found I could play. It was right around that A that, I'd played woodwind instruments before, but I got around the A and I'm like, what do I do here? I couldn't figure it out. And I had to go back to watch more videos, folks like me now, and figure it out, that I had to blow harder. That's what we call by breath pressure. But blowing harder really means focused air, because remember, it needs to be a constant stream of air. I don't mean this to sound so complicated, but these are the things that make for good tone and avoidance of tripping over notes. So I was like, I finally took me like weeks to figure that out. And I was able, I found that instead of blowing, I blew a little harder, but instead of blowing a little harder, I could focus my airstream. Blowing the same amount with a focused airstream makes the air come out a little harder. Anyway, or just blow a little harder. You'll get used to it. But every whistle's a little different. The MK Pro. So this thing, so I've got to start paying attention at the second octave G. And I've got to really blow harder. So if I'm going to play a tune on the MK Pro on one of our videos, I'm practicing it ahead, because if I'm used to playing my Howard or my Burke or my Carbony, and I pick up this guy, it's another kettle of fish. Learn your whistle. I recently bought a Quizzle, and I'll review it. I'll introduce it soon. Review's not the word I like, but I'm learning. I just got this whistle. I'm learning how to play it. So I pretty easily found the holes. So I'm not going to trip over the notes as much because I found the holes. But that's okay. I need a broader stream of air, and I need that constant stream of air to get that better note. And I'm using a little more air. Again, familiarity with the whistle. So I'm playing this guy to get to know him better. And the back pressure, the breath pressure, I like to call it breath pressure. The breath pressure required is a little different on some of the others. It kind of sneaks up on you. Now let's think for just a moment. So anyway, become familiar with fingers on the holes. You got to work on that one. Attentive exercise over time for hole coverage. Constant airflow. Breath pressure appropriate to your whistle and the note you're playing. The breath pressure to play on my Howard would not work on the low D. If I do that, it's going to sound like a squelchy middle D. So, breath pressure appropriate to the note, to the whistle. And so that's where we get into tone quality. So, as you're figuring this out, I like to sneak up on it. So, like you could start like on the G, and then vary your stream of air, vary your focus, vary your pressure, and find where it sounds okay. And that's okay. Now, go down a note. And I was experimenting with, can I increase my pressure a little bit? And when I did, I bumped into the second octave. And you need to know that. How gently or firmly do you need to blow, particularly on those low notes, to get a good tone? So on my Howard, so I was pushing too hard. For me, and one of the scale exercises is long notes, like what I was just doing there. That's so important. Consistent airflow, breath pressure appropriate to the place on the whistle and the whistle. If I do that same thing on my Burke, notice the tone is a little different. You have to accept that. You have to understand that. And one of the reasons I harp on buy a whistle that you love the tone. Don't just buy it because of the money. Buy it because you love the tone. Now this is the Tony Dixon tunable aluminum body, low D. It's slightly different in tone and in the pressure I need. Do you hear that's a little, I'm not even sure how to describe it. It's a different tone. So you've got to find Hear that little bit of breathy raspiness there? I'm trying to figure out, is that me or is that how the whistle wants to play? I think it's how the whistle wants to play. Whole coverage. I'm experimenting a little with, can I change my breath pressure? And the answer is the Tony Dixon doesn't want me to increase it much. So that's important. So take those other things. The learning whole coverage consistently over time by attentive exercise. Learning to blow at a consistent rate into your whistle, a rate that produces a note that you don't mind. That wasn't good. Oh, had to find the hole. I had my hand away from the whistle and I had to find it. See, that happens. So, whole coverage, blowing appropriate to the whistle, appropriate to the place on the whistle with the right pressure to get good tone quality. And I will just sit and listen as I play. This is so, so important. I can't underline this one enough. If it was social media, I'd put 10 exclamation marks on it. And I'm out there, I was messing with the shape of my mouth a little bit. Notice I've got, this is not like what we would call for flute an embouchure thing, but I've got the cheeks drawn in just such a little bit so that I can focus my air. I'm not too relaxed. Now, I've seen some people happily play with puffy cheeks. Well, I can't do it. I've never done that. And so I have a hard time doing it. What's going to work for you? Now, another thing, one last thing to close out that's helpful. Your phone, the microphone on your phone's not all that great, except that. Pull out your phone, though, set it somewhere and play and listen to yourself and go, oh, that sounded better than I thought. And listen to yourself going through some of these. Don't listen to yourself just playing a tune. Listen to yourself. I was just playing a different whistle, see? I have the privilege of having to hear myself all the time because I edit the videos, and so that is so helpful for me. I'll listen to myself and I'll go, oh, I didn't like that very much. That was stumbly. That was a bad note transition. That was bad whole coverage. I need to go back and work on that. Consistent, attentive attention over time, scale exercises and stuff. And then like, that was a bad octave transition. I must have, or I stopped, I breathed at the wrong place, or blah, blah, blah. So listen to yourself. And lots of friends have said that because it's a great idea. My friends, I hope these are a few helpful things for you in working on not being stumbly while playing and whole coverage and good tone quality. And this is not just, as I said, this isn't just a beginner question. This is an every musician question. This is a question you go through with every single whistle you purchase, no matter how high or how low the key is. This is what you and I have to do, and it's that important. I hope this is helpful. Please like the video if it is, and please subscribe if you're new and checking us out because of the conversation. Thank you so much, my friends, and I always appreciate the questions because I think, oh, these are such great questions. I need to think about that and then talk about it. because it helps all of us. So until next time, this is Scott Shade. Happy whistling.